Thank you for joining me, fellow Guardians. This is Sam from Multiverse Mission Control, and today's quest is Foundations of Valhalla. So, I've been talking to the players for the past few. Let's try to send one toward the writers and devs. I am by no means an expert in these matters, and I don't even know who's got the share of responsibility for decisions like these, nor am I trying to assign blame in any way. I'm just noticing a certain trope that every time it appears, it kind of threatens to shatter my immersion a little bit. I just want to call attention to it, and I trust that someone with more know-how in the industry will know what to do with that concern. Video games give us a rare chance to live out our heroic fantasies. In some cases, that means the starry-eyed, do-no-wrong Mary Sue character who always knows the right solution. In some other cases, we've got a more flawed protagonist in an imperfect world with open-ended problems who still tries to do their best regardless. In either case, and for different reasons, these characters can inspire us with hope and reassure us that we're on the right path, even if it doesn't always seem that way. Now, being a protagonist does not necessarily mean being a good guy. I mean, in fact, it's usually pretty easy to tell when it's the studio's intent that you be a bad guy. God of War, the first prototype, and any series with a clear dichromatic moral choice system like Infamous or Knights of the Old Republic all give you the opportunity to play a character whose entire moral philosophy seems to be everything belongs to me, and anyone in my way better not have made long-term plans. A chance to take off the mental barriers for a moment and see what it's like to really cut loose. Of course, done well, this game should simultaneously condemn this behavior by organizing the story in such a way that the character creates their own downfall, or that of a character we have come to like. Or else by making the action too cartoony to take seriously, like Saints Row, for example. Voltaire once said, "All of us have murdered in thought, but since you are a responsible human being, you know to keep it in thought, and only to act on it in the game world when you're reaching the limits of your patience." So let's just guide that thought in such a way that it's entertaining in the moment, while staying aware of how bad an idea it would actually be. You're not a bad person to have these thoughts. You would be bad to act on them in the real world. Just keep the urge towards the game world. Point is, it's really easy to tell when you are intended to play the bad guy. But when you want to feel good about yourself, when you want to be a hero, how do you know you're playing a good guy? No. Too deep a question. Let's not go there. For in truth, we can never be sure of the relative morality of our actions, never sure of the long-term consequences or whatnot. Chaos theory and all that. Anyway, so instead let's just put a few qualifiers on that. Should we just take it as writ that the designated protagonist is automatically justified? Well, I feel like Nathan Drake's entire entourage would disagree. Not to mention, we'd lose out on great titles like Shadow of the Colossus, for example. But back on task. Just to name a random example. This is just something I spawned out of my head. There's a killer on the loose, and you've been framed. But without this guy's testimony, not only can't your innocence be proven, but a mob boss is allowed to walk. Who do you trust to sort this out good and proper? Norman Jayden, FBI, or the Punisher? If you laughed, cringed, or wrote your will at the latter option, you probably know what I'm talking about here. And before the fanboys start jumping to Frank's defense, may I remind you how many times he's targeted heroes, like Spider-Man and Wolverine, who turned out to be falsely accused? Yeah, that. Exactly that. Let's put it this way. If there was a violent brouhaha, either on the global or on the local level, with various degrees of moral ambiguity attached, and you had this person on speed dial, whoever it is, whatever game you're playing, would you feel confident that they would either resolve it nicely or at the very least not make it worse? Is this a person who you could comfortably call a hero, who could in turn help you feel like a hero? And usually, the way you can make that call is if this person believes in some of humanity's more eminent personal values, like courage, grace under fire, compassion, open-mindedness, and of course, mercy. The implication and the original idea behind these ideals is that your protagonist believes in humanity, even if it's not like a consistent thing throughout. Ultimately, they believe that people are good deep down, that they have potential to grow and to become something beautiful. This allows you to delve past the surface level and understand that everyone has a story, that everyone has a reason they believe the way they do, and often they're not just doing things just for the evils. That deep down, everyone who has committed to evil actions is usually just some scared little kid inside who feels they have no choice left. Now, I'm not making this episode just to expand on how great Mercy is. I feel like that's self-evident. Nor am I saying that you can't ever kill dudes in games. I do frequently, and we'd lose a lot of great titles. And I mean, I just got done saying how therapeutic and cathartic uber violence can be. But rather, this episode is focused on how Mercy is introduced to a game. Because sometimes the execution is a bit wonky. Now, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that this is an inherently weird problem to solve. Because when you're designing a problem A to B and enemy characters are involved, usually you've got to give your player a tool to remove them as an obstacle, even if you're using indirect means, like in a puzzle game. And usually, that means it's just easiest to kill them. In fact, from the player's perspective, if it's like Skyrim, for example, where you know the evil character in front of you is a static bot that has no chance of changing in the future, it really just does become easier to turn to murder everything as your go-to for all your problems. But then that's what makes it so weird when, for example, you get chastised by your boss in the companion's questline for massacring the Silverhand, whose sole goal in life is to gank all y'all. And it's like, dude, in real life I would agree with you, but that's literally how I solve every problem in this game. Like, why is the player getting sassed when there's literally no other option? Yeah. If he cared that much, why wasn't there, like, a speech prompt in a critical spot? Oh, right, because speech is mainly for getting money. What's a diplomacy check? If the game gave me another feasible way to advance the plot, or even reason to think that it would have a better karmic effect on this world, then I would be doing that. And then after your boss gets killed, you just go right back to finishing off the buggers. It's like, it's weird. Are you starting to see what I'm getting at? Like, was our character supposed to learn something? Because they clearly didn't. Mercy is an important virtue for all of humanity, and it is something that I want to see more of in games. Undertale was one of the biggest hits of our generation for this reason, and I do love the ability to practice how I would want to play in real life. It's just that so often it's implemented badly, and it makes it seem like the writers or the devs or whoever are just kind of paying lip service to the concept without really understanding what it means. It's like nothing irks me more than when you've spent the entire game murdering everything in your path, and then your character decides to benevolently spare the last guy to show how great a guy they are. Because when you stop to think about it, that is actually really sociopathic behavior. That is exactly what Doctor Who warned us about in that episode where he had the one Slovene hostage. That's how you kill millions of people. Because sometimes, for no apparent reason, you let one go. You happen to be kind. Yeah, every time you do that, it's like, you're not a good guy. You're a serial killer trying to tell himself he's still a good person. So how do we solve this? Because merely limiting such beneficence to a cutscene seems insincere. Again, I don't know a whole lot about design, but I've played a lot of games and I've noticed many variants on how to implement this idea. And there are many pros and cons to both, and I think that somewhere in the intersection of them is the answer. Usually a pacifist run is most easily accomplished with stealth games. After all, the whole point is to remain unseen, so theoretically, you could just avoid conflict altogether, and often you do. But not every game can be a stealth game, so what do you do when you hope to promote good practices in a more typical game? Dialogue options can be somewhat better. You know, handing the reins to the player and saying, you decide the character's morality. But then you occasionally run into the thing like in Knights of the Old Republic, where you just know you're getting into a fight to the death if you continue to interfere, but you pick the I don't want to fight option to gain light side points. It's like, it's kind of the same problem. You know you're about to kill someone, you just make it seem like you're not. I remember I massacred the entire Tusken Raider camp for XP, and I didn't get any dark side points for it because I knew how to manipulate the system. Also, because screw the Tuskens, they're the reason Darth Vader is a thing. Well, part of it anyway. Perhaps you could set the character up against beings of pure evil for the lion's share of the game, and then have them show mercy to the humans they encounter. Much less moral gray on the surface, though of course that comes with its own problems, like dehumanization, for example. I mean, dear God, how many Uruk have I just gleefully slaughtered in Shadow of Mordor? Then again, that might be part of the point of the story, but back on task. Perhaps you could write the characters in such a way that it's always implied they pull their punches. Like any game starring Batman or Spider-Man, for example. I mean, video games already stretch the limit on what's physically possible, right? I mean, most blokes should be in the ICU or the morgue within the first minute of most of the fights I've seen. And certainly within the context of their world, Wayne or Parker knowing some unseen ninja logic move that could prevent such outcomes kinda sounds legit. It's kinda comforting. But then the player ain't really Bruce or Peter, are they? Is mercy something that only the strong can accomplish? Something to consider. Perhaps you write the character to show remorse for their actions, to espouse that they would not be doing it if they had any other choice. Kind of, in a way, it's kind of the opposite of the thing that ticks me off. For this character, they're merciful as a rule, and kill as a last resort. Kinda like Vash the Stampede in Trigun. So rather than killing everything and then being merciful only at the end, you're merciful throughout and kill the last guy because he leaves you no choice. Something like that. Could put a more frail human twist on the whole thing. You know, make it more relatable. But I think that the most important thing you can do is to program mercy into the mechanics themselves. Trank rifles, sleep darts, knockout moves, Infamous's arc restraint, Undertale's spare button. That's where this belief shines. Give your players the opportunity to practice how they would want to play it in real life with their own two hands. Well, I mean virtual hands, but that'll still transfer to the brain easier. It's possible to feel like story and gameplay separate as your character makes a choice that you haven't been making the whole time. Or if you pick the good guy option and just kind of hope that everyone ignores the ever-growing trail of corpses you leave in your wake. But if you have the opportunity to put your beliefs into your modus operandi at every turn, to let it be a choice that you yourself are constantly making, a struggle that you yourself are willfully undertaking, that's how it's going to hit players where they live. Now, this is just my suggestion because this too is not perfect. Often these mechanics end up getting paired with a moral choice system that can seem really judgmental, like pick the good route or you're a bad person sort of thing. Or else be nice is how you solve all the world's problems. But then again, sometimes making a mistake in games like this and then going back and seeing how much better it is when you've made the right call can stick with you in a good way. It's like kind of cements it, makes it feel like these ideas are solid and reliable, and then you never want to make the mistake again. One game of particular note is Alien Isolation. Often, you're relegated to stealth, and we already covered that, but there is an interesting design choice that I think warrants notice in this game. Most of the humans you encounter are in full-blown survival mode and will kill you without hesitation out of paranoia. You get a brief interaction in the beginning with a guy who's had to get his hands dirty a lot, who gives you the basic, that's how it is now, that's how you survive sort of thing, while at the same time showing that these are not evil people, but people driven by desperation. Not to mention how visibly shaken the protagonist, Ellen, is at the idea of taking a life. From there, the choice is entirely your own, and the game neither rewards you for restraint, nor does it punish you for self-defense. Whatever that action means to you, it sticks with you, because the only voice telling you about it is the one in your head. It's almost like you got thrown into a real-life crisis to experience how well your values hold up when push comes to shove. The relative morality of your actions is something that you basically decide on the moment that cutscene pops up, and then you commit to it for the rest of the game. Instead, it's just implied that if you choose to kill, you've become the same as them, because you're letting desperation drive you, same as them. That you chose to kill when you knew that these people were scared and trying to survive, same as you. So does this mean that you should harden yourself and become cruel to survive in this world? Do you like what that implies? And what do you lose with that revelation? Or was this truly just a one-time thing, something that only happens in desperation? Does that mean you're only a good person when your needs are fulfilled? Are these things you might consider working on? On the other hand, if you choose not to fight, you have to acknowledge that these people will still kill you. They won't even hesitate. You have to acknowledge that that is part of humanity. It's not like you kill the big bad thing and then everything is good forever, because people will still do stupid things when they're afraid. That's just human nature. And there is no magical fix to everything. In fact, maybe sometimes you desperately don't want to hurt anyone in-game, and for the most part you don't. But you still end up offing one or two when your back's against the wall. And you'll remember what that felt like. Moments like that, you realize you're not an infallible human being. But henceforth in real life, anytime you remember feeling that same type of thing again, well, you're better guarded against it, because you know what it was like, right? You'll endeavor to watch yourself closer and make sure that doesn't happen again, if you really believe in mercy. And even through all this, if you do truly commit to a pacifist run, a true pacifist run, you prove that your own will is made of stronger stuff. And you know what? Maybe one or two people will get out of there in the future and reevaluate certain life choices based on your example. That's morality in a nutshell, after all. Who knows? But then again, maybe some people need more than just a slight nudge, because anyone who didn't believe in mercy initially is probably not going to be moved by that game. But sometimes the minimalistic style does work. This approach allows people to go ponder or talk amongst their friends and arrive at the idea for themselves. And I want to clarify, I definitely didn't go into this thinking that I had the perfect solution or that there was even just one solution. But there are games that I play to take a load off and amuse myself. There are games where I just want to be Mary Sue Good Guy, and then there are games where I just want to feel stable in a world that sometimes refuses to make sense. That whatever else may happen in life, that I know what to do in certain philosophical quandaries, that I'm stronger than desperation. And for these ones, the worst thing I could be called is a hypocrite, because if there's some unaccounted logical fallacy that either a neurotic or realistic mind could pick at to unravel the whole thing, it doesn't feel like it's worth investing myself in. Because at the end of the day, a true hero has to look at all the pain, the corruption, and the despair of the world, understand it for what it is, and rise above it, bringing everyone they can with them. They believe the world can be better, nicer, more kind, and they bring it into being with their own actions, and they inspire others to do the same. Make them fail occasionally if you must, it's only human, but remember that our ideals aren't just things to believe in when it's convenient for us. They should be a constant choice that we are consistently making throughout our lives. And an interactive medium, like video games, is a unique way to make that instinct as natural as breathing. And that's why I want to see more mercy and mechanics in games. Okay, thank you for indulging me. I hope that didn't sound too overly moralizing or hypocritical. That was just my thoughts on the subject. Again, I don't have the perfect solution. I'm not sure if there's only one, or if my if my perspective is even complete enough to bring into the conversation, but you know, if someone can take even a fragment of that and work with it, then you know, that's adding to the zeitgeist. And you know what? The amateur perspective is important too, because if I came up with it, probably a lot of people have as well and just haven't spoken up about it, you know? Okay, but that's it for this episode. So, thank you all for tuning in. Please comment and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And remember, you all have the potential to get good. Peace out.